Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Empowered Spirit Healing. We have Jennifer with us from Ascension Energies in Sound. How are you going today, Jennifer?
I'm doing pretty good, Paula. How are you doing over there in Australia?
I'm doing pretty good. We've had a bit of a cyclone going through at the moment, so it is just pouring with rain outside.
Wow.
And yeah, we're hoping it's not going to hit Perth. It seems to be more north of Perth, so hopefully
Good.
we'll be all good. But
Good.
apart from that, I'm very excited to get into talking about Atlantis today, which is what really kind of made us start this series in the first place, wasn't it? We really wanted to cover Atlantis.
Yes, and I'm really eager to get to talk all about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there's so much to cover. And so we're just trying to break it down into bite-sized pieces for people to absorb because it's a lot of information. And it can be, we've both found it a little bit overwhelming at times, haven't we? Just trying to process everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we just thought, what some people may not realize, and what I didn't really realize either, was that there's actually three different time periods of like time being in Atlantis, and then there was a destruction that ended it, and then it continued on, and then a destruction, and then continued on for the third time, and then there was a third destruction, and then that's when it completely sank. So what we wanted to do was break it up into three different parts and just kind of discuss each time period. But even then, still, we kind of just have to give an overview because there's just so much to cover. But then oh, yes, you want to say something?
We're going to cover hundreds of thousands of years.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
in the one
So,
time period.
so for anyone listening to this, don't be discouraged if it swirls in your head. Just try to absorb it if you can. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot of deep and strange information,
Yeah,
things that I never ever would have thought occurred potentially through his readings. So we're just going to do the best we can to sum it up. The
yeah,
destructions, yeah, and the destructions are really going to what we're going to kind of focus on. Not to be Debbie Downers or anything, but they're really important. This is potentially history that's been lost, and it is something I think that needs to be shared more of what could have, if this did potentially happen, we need to know.
yeah. We need to understand what led to the destructions and
Yeah, that too.
yeah, and what's going on in the modern world today and how that relates. So that's why, yeah, we kind of our main focus is on the destructions. But also, after we've covered the first three time periods, then we're going to deep dive into different interesting aspects. Like there's so much that we want to cover in this. And so we'll kind of deep dive into different things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because he goes into the dawn of man, and that's so deep and so much to wrap your head around. And then you kind of start marrying it up with other old texts and ancient information that's come out. And it's just
Hmm.
rather interesting to cross-reference all of them. So,
Yeah.
but that will be more subjects to come up after we get through the Atlantis times.
Yeah. And we also want to cover Lemuria as well, which is,
Yes,
yeah.
because apparently, per the Casey readings, Lemuria had their hiccups and destructions as well. Humanity has rose, humanity has fallen. And he said that they'll rise, they'll fall, they'll rise again, they'll fall again. So this is a cycle we're in.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think there's just, yeah, so much to cover. And we just thought we'll just give a brief overview of these three time periods so people can kind of understand. And then later on, we can deep dive into like the crystals and the healings and all the incredible things that
Fun,
yeah,
amazing work. Yeah,
yeah.
amazing stuff.
So it's really
Okay.
exciting. So, well, we'll bring up the slide to share with everybody to go through. Okay, can you see the screen okay, Jennifer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right. So this is all about the first fall of Atlantis with
Yep, here
with
we go, folks.
with Edgar Cayce. So we got a little map created just to kind of give us an idea of where Atlantis was located. So, according to the readings of Edgar Cayce, it was the time period was 200,000 to 50,000 BCE. So it was a huge span of time. That's 150,000 years of.
Yes. Yep, and that was the whole spiritual and human evolution from, the beginning of these Atlanteans.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of time passes, but I think it's really fascinating because there's a lot of things, there's been a lot of documentaries searching for Atlantis, and I just think it's really interesting. I've never seen it put out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, which I think is interesting. I love the Atlantic
Yeah.
name. But yeah, it looked like it was a pretty good sized continent
To begin
when
with,
it was
yeah.
in one piece. We'll start off with one
Yeah.
piece. It's one piece here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm just blown away by the time period. And it kind of makes sense as we go through, we'll kind of discuss how they kind of evolved a bit. So it makes sense that, they did evolve slowly over time into what became what we know of as all the advanced technology and everything that they had. But this is just the first time period. So just the first one before the first destruction was 150,000 years.
Yeah.
And according to Edgar Cayce's readings, it's located between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. And so this little map is quite interesting, pointing out some different points. So I just wanted to point out the Bimini Islands and Bimini Road because Edgar Cayce had predicted that Atlantis was going to start to reappear.
Atlantis will rise again.
Mhm. And he
So
predicted that, he said that it was going to happen.
I believe in 68 or 69.
Uh-huh.
And
And
they
that,
and it rose in I think 68 or 69. And we'll confirm that later on, folks. Sorry about that. But yeah, he did predict that the road would rise, and they did find it aerially. There's tons of pictures on the internet showing the Bimini Road and things like that.
yeah,
So there's something there.
there's definitely something there.
Yeah.
And he passed away in was 1945 or
Yep.
1947. Yeah. So
1945.
1945 he passed away. So he predicted that before, and then
Yeah.
it was actually found in the late 1960s. Whether it's 68 or 69, we'll confirm that. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yep.
um it's absolutely incredible. And so if you're interested in learning a bit more about the Bimini Road and you can check out the Dark Journalist because that's who we've watched a lot of his videos, and he does a great deep dives into all of this, and he calls it the hot zone. So
Yes.
yeah,
I was
there's some
just going to
great
mention the hot
episodes on his
zone.
channel, and
Yeah.
I will reference him in the description box below.
Perfect.
And yeah, he also referred to it as the golden age of unity consciousness,
Which
which is
is the
very,
start.
yeah,
And it's really interesting because it's fun to kind of look at the new age. The new age, I almost called it new age garbage, but the new age teachings or the new age information that's out there, they've hijacked so much.
mhm,
And it's just interesting to kind of go back through his readings and kind of see what he says about some of these things. And this was before man went into individual consciousness. We were in a unity consciousness, which Paul and I are going to get into later. But this is basically where he goes into the dawn of man.
yeah.
So yeah. So they can sit there and say, "Oh, a golden age and this and that." Well, they're not even we don't even understand what a golden age really was. And I think what we're being told is a golden age isn't a golden age at all. I think it has to do with a lot of control and things like that. So that's all things to just kind of keep in mind as we go through this stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to note that the golden age back then would be completely different. If we were to have a golden age now, it would be completely different because of the way that us beings and spirits have evolved over time.
100% great point because there is so many different spiritual evolutions and even human evolution, obviously, through these thousands and thousands of years. And what worked then isn't going to work now, like you said.
Mhm.
It's going to have to evolve with us. So there isn't like a repeat of it. But there is somewhat of a repeat, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's like there's the potential for a repeat, but it would be in a different way because we're very different beings to what we were back then. So
Yes.
we'll get into that in the next slide. So we
Oh,
wanted to
yeah.
kind of discuss about the ancient animals and the first Atlanteans. So do you want to do the first reading, Jennifer?
I'd love to, because this is one of my favorite ones. The earth was inhabited by animals long before it was inhabited by man. Reading 364-6. So, yeah, so this goes into the whole density bit. If anyone studied the law of one, Edgar Cayce goes into the law of one with the densities. So, yeah, this was when the planet was evolving with the animals. And it sounds like the Atlanteans had some problems with the animals, Paula.
Yeah, just a little bit. So
Yeah,
we'll
we'll get to
find
that.
out more about that as we go along. But yeah, it was
Yes.
definitely but in the beginning, it seems like they lived quite harmoniously with the animals. I'll
Yeah.
read the next one. So the first Atlanteans became dwellers in the rocks, in the caves, and those that also made their homes or nests, as it were, in the trees, from reading 364-12. So we wanted to include that one as well because this is kind of like what we are told about in evolution is the cavemen. Yeah. And so it seems like they were more living in nature in and living harmoniously with the animals. Things go
Yes.
awry later on, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But
Yeah,
they're very,
they utilize nature's technology in a sense. They
yes.
utilize the trees, they utilize the rocks. And I just can, and we all kind of wonder what our ancient planet looked like, I'm sure. And you think about these potentially mountains that look like old tree trunks. And I
Yeah.
just think to myself, well, did the Atlanteans potentially live in those? I mean, you just got to wonder because even back in the day when America was being settled, we'll say, a lot of people built homes out of what was left of the tree stumps and they lived in these homes. So I
I
think
didn't
that's really
realize that.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting to me that that collective thought is almost still there, was still there for those people.
Yeah.
So I think that happened a lot in the mountains, is particularly in the South, I've heard.
Mhm.
So that'd be something we could look up too.
And one theory I've heard, I can't remember where, but there is different theories out there that things have kind of shrunk over time. So,
Yes.
it would be interesting to if the trees and the fruit and everything was much larger back then than it is today. So,
I, yeah,
mhm. And it seems like a lot of the animals were a lot larger too back
right.
then.
We're going to get into that some more.
Yeah.
And the people, and like you mentioned, we have had different spiritual evolutions throughout these hundreds of thousands of years. And this is a great example, is this next reading.
Yeah.
Before the first destruction of the land, the entity lived to be 1,000 years old in years as termed today and saw great changes. Excerpt from reading 3579-1. So here we go again with some, if we want, I'm sorry guys, I'm not a real big Bible adept storyteller, but here we go to like longevity of our lives.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting to just cross-reference these things.
Absolutely. And it seems like it was quite common for
Yeah.
people in Atlantis to live for hundreds of years of age. I'm not sure that all of them would have lived to 1,000. This particular person that Edgar Cayce was reading for this reading, this person 3579, they lived for 1,000 years, which is just an incredible amount of time. I don't know
I
if I'd
find it
want to
so
live.
stressful. I
Yeah.
know. I find it so stressful. And then you wonder though also like so if they lived to be 1,000 years, was time moving much faster than it is in our world that we live in today?
That's
These are things
interesting.
that just kind of cross my mind.
Yeah, and I think their consciousness was quite different then as well, because so as it was explained, is that they lived in a unity consciousness. So it people were not so separate as they are today. And I don't believe that they were as dense as we are today as well. They seem to be more, their bodies seem to be lighter. And then it's as over time that they've kind of messed around with materialistic things and experimentations, they became more and more dense. So it also kind of makes sense then that a being who is lighter, not as physically dense as we are, and with as many toxins around, it makes sense that they could live for longer as well, you know?
I know I wanted to say, well, they probably may not have been being poisoned as much back in them days
Yeah.
as we're poisoned every which way today in our world today.
Yeah. Like every way that they can think of,
Ev-
we're being poisoned.
Up and
Yeah.
down, all around, it's coming at you.
Yeah.
But anyways,
But just imagine like what you would see living for 1,000 years, how much evolution you would see.
even in like my grandparents' lifetime or my parents' lifetime, my lifetime, I'm seeing a
Yeah.
ton of changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, 1,000 would be a bit much. Bit much.
Certainly would. Okay, so there was some interesting, sorry, I kind of squished a lot on this page, but we wanted to include these readings. So as time went on, it seems as though two kind of groups evolved. So I just want to share that for anybody that's interested, I listened to this and Jennifer's listened as well to this fascinating, like 3.5 hour lecture by a lady called Gigi Young, who we've mentioned before, I think. She did this series called Atlantis, and it's called The Mad Scientists of Atlantis. And it's a fascinating listen. And she brings in a lot of Edgar Cayce and also Rudolf Steiner's work and Helena Blavatsky and talks about different things. Also, she has been up to the Akashics and she's seen Atlantis for herself. So she's also sharing things from her own memories, so it's absolutely fascinating to listen to for anybody that wants to know more. And she talked about there was high priests and high priestesses, and the reason why they were high priests and priestesses, what made them different to everybody else, was that they were born through immaculate conception or light conception, which I've been discussing in the book that I've been reading, Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus. So it's so fascinating that this relates. So there
Again,
were,
cross-referencing here. Sorry
yeah,
to be interruptive, but
no,
some
no.
cross-referencing here.
Yeah, more
Yeah.
cross-referencing, absolutely. And so I think it's interesting to note that because sometimes we can be made to believe that Atlantis, everybody was highly evolved, everybody was, very psychic and had all these abilities. But no, it seems like there were a certain group of these high priests and high priestesses that were immaculately conceived. So they had, I guess, certain abilities that not everybody else had, and they trained. And so the first one that kind of came along was, according to Edgar Cayce's readings, was somebody called Amilius. And Amilius had a group of priests and priestesses that he would train. And then slowly over time, of course, it's like the story of Jesus and Satan, it's kind of like same kind of thing. Amilius and the Belial Group kind of formed because these other beings stepped away.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. You got the good and the good and evil, the good
Yeah.
bad, which gets old to me because I'm really sick of that whole good
Story.
bad thing. I mean, I understand there's got to be opposites and whatnot, but the more I study this Casey stuff, the more I'm like, I'm really sick of their crap. I'm really sick of the Belial's groups, because it's bleeding through to today,
It is.
unbelievably. If this
Yeah.
is, yeah, we're just talking here, but it's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah. So it's like the Amelius group is the group, the good people, I guess. They
Service to
believed,
others.
yeah, they
Yeah.
believed in living according to the law of one that Edgar Cayce discusses, living with nature and living in unity and being of service to others, basically. The Belial group over time started to, and this would have happened over thousands of years because this was 150,000 span of time. So it didn't just happen overnight. But obviously, they
Yeah.
started experimenting with different things and becoming more separate and experimenting with materialistic things and just started to become quite selfish. And over time, they lost their morals as well. Would you like to read the first one, Jennifer?
Sure. In the period then, some 98,000 years before the entity of Ram into India, there lived in this land of Atlantis one Amilius, who had first noted that of the separations of the beings as inhabited that portion of the earth's sphere or plane of those peoples into male and female as separate entities or individuals from reading 364-3. Now there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So this he's basically referencing when they were a unity consciousness and they separated into individuals, and that's when people started getting selfish. I guess is a good way to sum it up.
Yeah.
But so back into New Age garbage, and I'm going to be mentioning that probably different times we're talking through these slides. So he says here, or plane of those peoples into male and female as separate entities or individuals. So we have this whole twin flame thing
Yes.
out there. Well, per the Cayce doesn't talk about twin flames, but he talks about how there was androgynous beings and their sexes separated into different souls. So I think that was a really interesting reference. I kind of was like, okay, well, that's maybe potentially where they got that
The
from.
twin
But
flames.
what,
Yeah.
yeah, and what Casey's teaching isn't anything if they're teaching on twin flame end.
No.
So,
Yeah. But
yeah.
it's
So
very
anyway,
interesting to note that. Yeah.
yeah,
And so it seems like the very first beings were androgynous, the kind of ones that were dwelling in the caves and in the trees and making nests, etc. And then over time, they started to separate into, and I think there was another reading, but we couldn't include everything because there's just so much. But one of the
yeah.
readings kind of explains that it was like the sons of Amilius and Belial that emerged into the male and female separate entities. Yeah. And so over
We'll
time,
go
they,
into that deeper. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
really interesting one.
Hmm. Yeah. And then also, just for something interesting, because Jennifer and I were like, because it says before the entry of Ram into India, and we were like,
Yeah.
who's this Ram person?
We had to look it
And
up.
so we just wanted to share that. So if anybody is wondering that as well, I'll just quickly share. We looked up on Wikipedia to see what who Ram potentially was, and so it seems as though Ram relates to the Ramayana, which was kind of like a myth or a story from the ancient Indian times, and there was a character called Ram who was like the kind of ideal person, and he was an avatar. Oh yeah, it's an epic. That's right. That was the word I was thinking of. It's a story. It's an epic, the Ramayana, of the life of Rama, who was the seventh avatar of the Hindu deity Vishnu. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's just very interesting that that's who he could potentially be relating to. We don't know 100%, but
Yeah.
that's what a lot of interpreters of Edgar Cayce's work has related it to. And so you were saying, Jennifer, according to the time period, which was 7th century BCE to the 3rd century BCE, you're saying that was roughly about 3,000 years, was it,
I think it was.
after this last destruction?
You're putting me on the spot with math, Paula.
Sorry.
Come on. Hold on. It
It
was
was a
I
long
think
time ago.
it was a while ago because we were trying to figure out like, well, when did this guy come into the Hindu belief system? And
Yeah.
then, yeah, because the Casey readings go back so many years.
Yeah, and so then that lines up with the previous slide. Oh no, so that lines up with the reading right here, sorry, where it's
Yep.
198,000 years before. And if, the time period was 200,000 BCE to 50,000, So then, yeah, that makes
Just say it works itself out there mathematically.
yeah, that's right. But I just thought that
We
was just
don't
an
really know.
interesting.
It's just a long ass time ago.
It
That's
was
all
a
I
long,
know.
very long time ago. But I just thought that was interesting just to put that in there, who he could be
Yeah.
referring to
And
for
I'm
the
very
grand.
interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really want to learn more about that avatars that Wikipedia called it. I'm going to
Yes.
learn more about that avatar.
Well, avatars are very interesting beings. I guess Jesus also could be referred to as an avatar because they were
Yes.
beings with highly advanced abilities, being able to biolocate, being able to walk on water like Jesus did, being able to do incredible things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the sons of Belial were of one group, or those that sought more the gratifying, the satisfying, the use of material things for self, without thought or consideration as to the sources of such, nor the hardships in the experiences of others. From reading 877-26. That just sums up
It does. They
perfectly.
just don't care. They don't care. It's all about them.
They don't care,
Doesn't
no.
matter if they're killing their neighbor slowly or, they just don't care.
Mhm.
Very
And
selfish.
it it seems like, according to like what Gigi Young's information has shared and the Dark Journalist, and also what we've gone through and what we've learnt and what Edgar Cayce shares, it seems like the Belial Group is still around today.
100%.
Yeah. And we can see that very clearly in these certain
In the,
people
yeah,
that don't really care what choices they're making and how it's affecting the world. And this is why we really want to share this information with everyone, because this is history repeating itself. We've been
yeah.
here before.
And another thing we'll get into throughout this series is how they've almost reinvented occult black magic into technology.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of warnings about this from these mystics. Steiner warns about it, Casey warns about it, Blavinsky warns about it. So yeah, it's all very interesting to piece together.
it is. And it's
Yes.
important to understand this, to understand how it all works and where this is all coming from so that we have the knowledge to do something about it. Because if you don't know, you don't know, and you can't do anything
Yep.
about something that you don't know about. So did you want to read the next one, Jennifer?
The other group, those who followed the law of one, had a standard. The sons of Belial had no standard, save of self. Uh-oh.
Oh, self
Self.
self-aggrandizement.
Thank you so much, Paula. That's from reading 877-26. So yeah, Paul and I just summed it up on their selfish means. So that's a very profound and accurate statement he made.
Yeah,
So we've got these two groups. They started out pretty good, and then they got a little selfish, and they split off, and now we've got troubles in Atlantis.
yeah. So you've got the one group that's still living to unity consciousness, still being good and serving to others, and then you've got the other group that's just going off and doing their own thing, and it's quite scary.
Now we're going to get into what the Amilius group did do to train their priestesses to exercise their psychic abilities, their intuitional gifts, their connection to divine source
Mhm.
accurately. There was a lot of training involved with that. So you go ahead.
Okay, so question. Describe in detail the entity's work with the white stone. Answer. The entity was the interpreter of the messages received through the concentration of the group upon the stone from which the oracle spoke from the realm of the saints. Reading 2464-2. So this is really, really fascinating. It seems that they had this white stone, also known as a crystal, I guess, that they used to communicate with the realm of the saints, which is basically just higher consciousness. Mhm.
I'd like to think of it as just being a really pretty big old quartz crystal.
Yeah, yeah,
Big
absolutely.
old shiny. I mean, yeah, that's how I've envisioned the white stone.
Yeah. And so, there was only specific people that could do this. So there was an oracle that spoke on behalf through the stone and communicated with the saintly realms and then communicated to everybody else around. So, I think just like I said before, we kind of get this misinterpretation that everybody had these gifts and abilities, but no, it was only these people that trained in order to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with this white stone brought them great technology and great um, you know, housing, if we want to call housing back at Atlantis. I mean, look, I imagine the structures that were built then are nothing like they were now. I'm
Yeah.
sure they were magnificent, but this is where they got the technology from, was the saintly realms to build their advanced civilization.
Yeah, because they started off as cavemen and then they evolved with this over time from this
Yeah.
incredible technology that we can't even imagine today.
Right?
And I mean, yes, we are advanced in certain types of technology today, but they were advanced in other types of technology that we can't even conceive of. And it was more nature based by the sounds of it. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, where did they get all this knowledge from? It was from the
Yeah.
saintly realms.
Yeah. So the next quote reads, "The stones that are circular, that were of the magnetized influence upon which the spirit of the one spoke to those people as they gathered in the service, are of the earliest Atlantean activities in religious service, as would be called today." Reading 5750-1. I want to point out, I think it's really, really interesting when we look at a lot of our ancient relics, our ancient megalithics. Some of them are circular, and a couple that come to mind are Stonehenge.
Hmm.
We even have a Stonehenge here in America, apparently, in North Carolina.
Oh,
It isn't
wow.
necessarily to the level of the megalithic size as Stonehenge in England, but it's circular and it's got the summer solstice peering through those days of the year. And then even the mound builders, which Casey gets into the mound builders extensively as well. And Paul and I will go into that when we get there. But the mound builders, again, we have the circular thing. And I can't remember what podcast it was because Paul and I have been listening to so much Casey stuff. I don't remember where this came from, but they said that, oh, I know it was Jim Vieira.
Okay.
Yep, he talked about how the different, because he studied a lot of indigenous peoples that talked about the Great Flood. That's what he was talking about.
Right.
And
Hmm.
he said that that was their collective honoring memory of the Atlanteans was the circular of what was there at what Atlantis was.
Hmm.
So I thought that was a really interesting thing to mention too.
Oh, 100%. And that's why we wanted to include this quote because it's very fascinating that so many ancient relics and kind of ruins that are left behind today that we can see are in this circular,
Yeah.
yeah, they're in the circular shape. So I think that's very important to note. And because there is so much power in being in a circle. Even if you
There
think about the legend of Arthur sitting at the round table.
There's another one.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning him. I forgot. Yeah, Knights of the Round Table. That's interesting. I've always wanted to know more about King Arthur and the whole Avalon thing. It's a very
Me too.
interesting. I just have so much interest in it, and there's information out there, but I just don't feel I'm really getting the truth of it all. So I still search and I still seek.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there seems to be a lot of power when people come together and are in a group, in a circle. And it's, even says right here, magnetized influence upon which the spirit of one spoke to those people. So they gathered together in a
And they
circle.
protected each other.
Yes.
They were protecting each other with the how they knew to use their minds.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting that, it says that that's their earliest kind of way of having a religious service. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so,
And now we're in churches and like church pews all lined up like sardines, there's no circles or nothing.
exactly. And it's
Maybe
like,
for them, but
yeah. And I don't think that's how it's meant to be. Same
There's
as
no
with,
flow.
do you know what? Because my daughters attend a Rudolf Steiner school. Absolutely amazing. And my daughters haven't always attended. My two older daughters went to a mainstream school for their whole of primary school. And then they went to high school. But my youngest daughter has been lucky enough to start from kindy at a Rudolf Steiner school. Every
Lucky?
single morning, they start the class in a circle.
Really?
Yep. Every single morning, that's how they start, is in a circle, and they'll say some beautiful little verses and they'll sing some little songs and they say little prayers and they light a candle and then they thank the fire fairy for giving them light. It is so
I
beautiful.
love that.
It is so beautiful. And so it just makes me think, why are classrooms set up with these, all facing the teacher in these lines? Why are churches set up in these lines facing somebody at the front
Yeah.
when we should be sitting in a circle? So everybody is equal, everybody is valuable.
I think that might be a part of it,
Yeah,
is it does almost dehumanize you a bit that you have some better figure of authority in front addressing.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
that's interesting.
And it's also interesting at the Steiner School, at least the ones that my girls go to, I don't know what it's like elsewhere, but there's no uniform. So everybody is encouraged to, of course, there's a dress code. You can't just wear anything. You've got to wear school appropriate clothing and cover up appropriately. But I love that there's no uniform so that they can express who they are.
Yeah,
And
if they want to wake up and wear pink, they can wear pink. If they want to wake up and wear blue, they can wear blue, right? There's
yeah,
no, because
it's not,
uniforms are very take away your creativity with your own little fashion when you're a young adult, when you're a kid,
but it's also,
you
it
know.
takes away that self-expression and who you
Yeah.
are as a person. And also, I love that all the teachers are called by their first name.
Really? I haven't heard that.
Yep, all of the teachers are their
Wow.
first name. There is no Mrs. or Mr. It's just whatever the name is. Even the
Oh,
principal,
no.
even the principal was referred to by the first name.
I
And
did. Wow.
it's amazing. And so because I was very lucky. They invited the parents to come and see the morning circle on Thursday, just so we could just see how the kids start their day and what it's like. And so
And
all the parents just sat
yeah, and how
quietly
important for parents.
to see that. It was
I
beautiful that
mean,
we were invited
parents, yeah.
into the classroom. So we all sat there quietly and we watched what the kids do every morning, how they start their morning before their main lesson. And it was just beautiful to see, the teachers are sitting in the circle, the teacher and the teacher's assistant, they're all sitting there with the students. They're talking, they're being called by their first name. It's this beautiful respect, and everyone's treated beautifully and nurtured. And, by the time these students get to year 12 before they graduate, it is just amazing how mature these students are. But anyways, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
rambling
thrilled you're
on.
happy. I'm glad to hear that there's a positive school experience for children somewhere in our world. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for you to read the next quote because this is another good one from these Casey readings.
Yes. So in Atlantis, a priestess and aide to an SC knee. So we thought that was interesting. It's like a scene. And the keeper of the white stone, or that through which many of the peoples before the first destructions in Atlantis kept their accord with the universal consciousness, through speaking to and through those activities. Reading 5037-2. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting since I've been reading the Anna book and they talk about the Essenes and the Essene community. And it's like, oh my goodness, is this
How
um
old how old are the Essenes really?
yeah, that's what it makes you wonder, doesn't it? And I also feel after reading through the Anna book, it seems like their lifestyle and the beliefs that they had clearly came from Atlantis. And a lot of the Essene community would travel to Egypt and take different Egyptian initiations. And as we know, Egypt has the people coming from Atlantis, the survivors, and settling in Egypt and
Yeah,
sharing their knowledge with, like, Thoth, for example. Thoth is a big one.
exactly. He's
Yeah.
another good example. Yeah.
Mhm. So yeah, I just think that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get
Oh, here we
into
go.
Atlantean technology.
In Atlantis, before destructive forces arose, associated with communications, lighter than air machines, radioactive forces. And that's an excerpt from reading 1023-2. So we're going to talk a little bit about Atlantean technology here. And I'm going to go ahead and let you take the other quote because they kind of marry into each other.
Sure. In the Atlantean, when at that time before the first of the destructive forces and the usages of the influences, as were gathered by the peoples to the lands about, when the entity building those that make for the carrying of those machines of destruction that sailed both through the air and under the water. Reading 1735-2.
I gotta admit, that would be a lot of fun to have a little vehicle that just buzzes underwater and buzzes through the air.
Incredible, isn't it?
I mean, this is like hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Hmm. And they had these abilities. I mean,
We
I
had this
remember
technology.
even listening to the Edgar Cayce Atlantis book on YouTube. We'll share that below. It's they even had TVs back in Atlantis. I mean,
Oh
it's just
yeah, yes.
mind-blowing.
Radios,
Yeah,
yes, television. And Casey goes into great detail on how they did all of this stuff too,
he
to
does.
the
He does explain it.
combustion, energy fields, and all of that.
And how they use the crystals to, as their
Oh,
source of energy.
yes, that as well.
Hmm. And so they would have
And
had free energy.
yeah. Yep, yep. I believe he says that. And if we think about our watches and our clocks and things like that, how much quartz crystal is in our technology, it's all in our stuff.
Yeah,
So
of
they've
course.
reissued the technology differently,
Yes.
um,
But even
but
in our
it's
mobile
similar.
phones, they have a bit of crystal.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating that they were doing all of this back then. But what
Yeah.
I love about it is that it seems to be a lot more nature-based. I mean, in one of the readings, it even said that was just too much to include, but said that they used elephant hide to help create these machines that would travel through the air and the water.
Yes.
I mean,
And then we go into the whole thing. Well, they had elephants. Okay.
yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, just something simple,
I
just in
know.
this reading.
They had elephants in
Yeah.
Atlantis. I mean, we just think of India as having elephants, but
Yeah.
so absolutely mind-blowing technology that they had. And, this is something we can deep dive into later if people are interested. We can talk more about it and go deeper into the readings. But like we said, we just want to give an overview. Otherwise, we'll be going on for
Yeah.
hours.
We're on fast forward right now.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So
Hmm.
let's do the entity in the Atlantean land in those periods when there were first begun the withdrawings from the law of one, those establishings of the sons or the sons of Belial in that experience. The entity, through the activities of Belial, became the priestess in the temple that was built in opposition to the ones or the sons of one. And in this the entity lost. When there were those destructive forces brought through the creating of the high influences of the radial activities from the rays of the sun that were turned upon the crystals into the pits that made for the connections with the internal influences of the earth, the entity through turmoil again joined with those of the law of one. From reading 263-4, and again, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So this woman, yeah, turned her back on the Amilius group, built a temple with Belial, and basically had some hard times. And I sounds like she went back to the Amilius group, like, yeah, I need to fix this.
Yeah. And I
Can you
mean,
imagine going and having a past life reading and hearing something like this? I just put myself in these people's shoes sometimes.
I know.
I would
It-
I wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, yeah, okay.
yeah. I think
Alrighty.
they probably were like that. They probably
Yeah.
did feel like that. But it's interesting here as well that, it relates to the influences of the radial activities from the rays of the sun that were turned upon the crystals into the pits. So it's very
Let's unpack
interesting.
that.
Yeah, I mean, so they're using these crystals, this technology, and the rays of the sun to power it. And,
How,
you know,
how much mind control was going on here? Were they mind controlling people? Because when I think of radio, I think of like it goes out, like the
yes,
Wi-Fi signal, it
emits.
goes out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, destructive forces brought through the creating of the high influences of the radial activities. That's how I would interpret that. And
Hmm.
they were obviously inverting and utilizing the sun's power.
Yeah.
So it's wild to think about what the heck he was talking about, but we can imagine.
Yeah. And it's also interesting. You brought up an interesting point when we were talking, Jennifer, about, if it was emitting these frequencies,
Yeah.
and did this affect the animals?
Yes. And I want to mention the Black Pyramid in Alaska. I think it's a conspiracy a little bit, but from my understanding, there's a big black period or pyramid in Alaska, and around it, or even around Harp,
Hmm.
the animals are angry. From my understanding, from people like listening to podcasts and things like that. I love cryptids, everyone. I'm always going down some cryptid rabbit hole. But yeah, and I think that's really, really interesting. So what are they omitting to change our energy fields, to influence our thoughts, drive us crazy with madness? You
Yeah.
just wonder if they're trying to perform the same stuff up there, if it's being successful. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
kind of what's popped into my head.
it's affecting our behavior. And it's like, well, did they do this and was it affecting the animals' behavior? Because they went from living harmoniously with the animals to getting to the point where it gets so bad. So
It gets so it gets so bad. I'm going to let you take that next quote because there we go.
yeah, so then began the period that when there were the invasions of this continent by those of the animal kingdoms. This brought about that meeting of the nations of the globe to prepare a way and manner of disposing of them. Reading 364-4. So basically, the animals, they were living harmoniously at one point. Next minute, the animals are getting so bad, so out of control, that apparently the Atlanteans just couldn't even be living in, like, they were just getting eaten by these
It,
animals.
it sounds like it too. It sounds like no one could really go anywhere or go for a walk out in the meadow. They get snatched up by, and Casey called the fowls of the air and beasts in the field, or beasts of the field and fowls of the air. So I'm thinking pretty good size. We
Yeah.
got them pterodactyl things and
And it just makes me think of
God knows
Jurassic
what.
Park.
Yes, Jurassic Park. Exactly. Exactly.
That gives me the creeps. I did not like
Yeah.
that movie when I was little.
Uh-oh.
It was scary.
I don't
Yeah, it
blame
was
you. I was older.
scary. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. So it just makes you think, okay, what happened? Why did all of a sudden these animals start going crazy and taking over? So bad to the point that they had to have a meeting with the
Of
nations of
nations.
the globe. So this is not just Atlantis, this is the whole world. They had to have a meeting together to try and come up with a solution because these animals were just taking over. So
Yeah.
let's get into the next slide because it's just mind blowing.
Oh, yeah. What was the date BC of this gathering? Answer: 50,722 years ago from reading 262-39. Okay, Edgar, that's pretty specific there, buddy.
Yeah.
In that land, when there were gathering of nations to combat forces of animal world and kingdom that made men's and man's life miserable. The entity then among those that stood for the use of elements in the air, the elements in the ocean, the elements in the lands as applied to forces to meet and to combat those of the animal kingdom. Often has the entity from this experience been able to almost conceive wherein the disappearance of those known as prehistoric animals came about. Reading 2893-1. So is he talking about dinosaurs here?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Is he talking?
prehistoric animals.
Yeah, that could be
You know,
like,
they always say that, yeah, they always said that dinosaurs and man never lived together, but I'm wondering if they did. There was
yeah,
some
and I'm
crossing.
sure I've heard that somewhere else before as well, not
Yeah,
just from Edgar Cayce, that there was people living with the dinosaurs.
yeah,
And also, like the mammoths and
yeah,
yeah, like what happened to them? So it's really, really interesting. So they had, it,
yeah.
it still just blows me away that they had to have this meeting with the whole,
He even talks about how they had diplomats or nation representatives,
right.
and those were the people that met, and they arrived in their little air cars. So they just zoomed
Wow.
on over. So other people around the world that were not Atlanteans had this type of technology, from my
I didn't realize
understanding.
that bit.
I
Yeah.
could be wrong, or maybe, I mean, a lot of it goes around in my head, but I swear that he said that there were some of them that had arrived in their air vehicles.
It's just amazing.
Or maybe the Atlanteans flew over and picked them up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
can imagine what a big deal. Can you imagine what a big deal that would be at the
Mhm.
time
Oh,
to have a
100.
whole League of Nations come together and be like, what are we going to do about these large animals that are they're killing us left and right?
Mhm.
No one's safe here anymore.
And so this is basically what started the whole first destruction was because they were trying to come up with a solution for these animals. And so their idea was to use the crystals, wasn't it, to divert the sun rays, I believe, in
He goes
and
into it a great, yeah, he goes into that great detail, and I'm going to be honest, I do not even know how to begin to paraphrase any of it.
yeah,
But basically, they started building bombs. They started building destructive weapons.
yeah, which would
And that's
probably
really,
relate today to what, happened in Hiroshima in Japan.
yes. Edgar
Mhm.
Cayce talks about that too. We can cover that in another video.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like nuclear things, and they had this technology. And after the meeting of nations met, the Atlanteans did come up with technology to try to combat these large animals. And they basically put together nuclear technology. Now, what I find really, really interesting is many of us have learned that the meteorite came and took out the dinosaurs,
Yes.
but the way Edgar Cayce talks about it as we attack the animals in the air, in the water, and on land. So was a meteor the Atlanteans' weapons? Is that how that's been interpreted? And that's what took out some of these large dinosaurs or things. I'm just asking questions. I don't know personally, but I think it's really, really interesting again to cross-reference some of these things that perhaps maybe it wasn't a meteor, or maybe that's how they would explain it being a meteor if it's a fireball coming from the sky. To me, that sounds like, you know, a little missile coming
Yeah,
from the sky at
absolutely.
you. And from my understanding, and I think you could probably elaborate on this as well, Paula, is it just decimated environments?
Yeah. So we actually kind of got like a little map to kind of give an idea of what it would have looked like. I mean, this is just kind of based on the readings of Edgar Cayce. We don't
Edgar
100%
Cayce.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was after the third destruction. So they basically they went after these animals and they loved it. They loved the destruction. This is the Belial Group, by the way. These are the
Mhm.
people that they all partnered with, thinking, okay, we got to take care of this. But once they did these devastation of these land beasts and fowls of the air,
They got a taste
they
for it.
just were like, holy crap, we can take over the Amilius group. We just gotta, put together a few weapons of, destruction. And so they started doing that. And that's basically that's what divided the continent, was that one major blow. And, it took out so much of the Belial group. It took out so much of the Amilius group. But another thing that was really completely and utterly disgusting that Cayce mentions is this is when they started the human bloodshed,
Yeah.
which I think is real. I hope he can come across material where he goes into that a little bit more. I even hate to admit that, but I want to know more.
Hmm.
Because I think we all kind of wonder where that all began. And
Yeah.
I always like to hear just theories out there about it, because it's like, where did we go wrong? But if
Yeah,
you
why
have
did
this
that
group,
even start? Where did the whole idea of,
well, one thing I'd love to ask Edgar, obviously I can't, but is like, were they eating meat during this period, or were they more strictly vegetarian? I need to go back through some of these readings because I don't think they talk about what they eat. They don't even talk about eating anything. But, if they
no.
took out these large dinosaurs and they got their kicks off the destruction and
Well, and that,
tissue, blood, I don't
yes.
know.
And that also makes me wonder if, because if they were more lighter etheric beings, did they start to eat meat and then did that make them more dense? Is that when they, were starting to have more materialistic,
That's
becoming more
so
material?
interesting.
Yeah.
Good point, Paula.
Yeah, it just kind of makes me think that that is one of the ways that they became more dense.
Yeah.
And so that's where they started coming up with this idea of, I suppose we could say the word one time, couldn't we, of sacrifice,
I
basically,
know I'm trying to be,
humans and
because we're
animals.
going to get in later on the road, we're going to be saying that word a lot. So we might have to come up with a catch term for us and our audience
Yeah.
too, because we're going to go into it a little bit more
Hmm.
about that stuff. But yeah, so it's like it's all kind of been going south ever since then. I mean, this was 50,000 years ago, and this was the first. We have
Yeah,
two more to cover after this one.
we do.
So
And
the
it
Belial group and the Amelius group just have more pissing matches with going against each other, and nobody really wins.
no, and it's really sad. And it looks like they destroyed such a huge portion.
Oh, yeah, the main continent is just, yeah.
And so I believe quite a few people would have, survivors probably would have left at this point as well. Obviously, there were the ones that stayed in Atlantis for the next kind of time period, but also, a lot of them probably left.
Yeah, and I believe the next destruction is 28,000 years ago.
Mhm.
So they had, a couple a couple tens of thousand, 20,000 years or so to rebuild and recover.
Mhm.
And then it gets into more, and we're going to cover that in our next episode. We're going to get into the second one,
Yes.
and it just gets more heated between these two groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I want
so,
our Amelius group to rise now, though. Our Amelius group, if there's an Amelius group here on planet Earth, they need to rise now.
100%.
Yeah.
Now is the time. Yes, before destruction happens again. We don't want that happening on a larger scale. These are the two main books. I mean, we've gotten sources from lots of areas, lots of different channels. I'm actually going to create an Atlantis playlist and I'll just include that below. So then any videos that Jennifer and I have been watching just to kind of learn more about this, and if you're interested and want to check them out, we'll put them in there. And but these are the two main books that we've gotten a lot of this information from. Is the Edgar Cayce Companion, which is great for everything. Hmm.
And Paula and I have even spoke before. It's like, if the overload of information her and I have been able to read in just these two books, can you imagine the information that has not
Been
been
tapped into.
released, that is being gate kept? Because I know
Yes.
they're gatekeeping over there. And then when I say over there, I mean the ARE.
Yeah.
I just can't help but feel there's some gatekeeping going on. And I would love, one of these days I'm going to get there for a weekend and I'm going to read, read, read. But for now, I'm very thankful for the information we do have. I need to tell myself that. that I'm grateful for the information we're able to share and
Yeah,
learn
and I
about.
also wonder, I think also sometimes things have to be released to us over time because there's only so
Yeah,
much we can handle at one point. And
yeah.
I think if we knew, too much, it can become more than what we could cope with, I think.
You're probably right, Paula. I just want to sometimes just take a big old piece of cake and just chew on it for a while.
Yeah.
But it is overwhelming. It give you a headache. I mean, even some of these days I've sat and studied and read his books and his readings. It gives me a headache. It's overload.
Yeah.
And I have to pull back. And that's where you got to be like, okay, I'm overdoing it. I need to pull back.
Yeah, and you just have a
Nothing
little
will,
break and digest
yeah,
what you've
nothing
absorbed so
will
far.
absorb and nothing will flow if you push it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
Well,
what a
that was fun,
fascinating,
guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
very fascinating time period, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, we are very excited to join you for the next episode about the second destruction and the second time period.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you want to share, Jennifer, before we head off?
No, I think we covered everything
Yeah,
that we want. Yeah.
very, very fascinating.
So it's going to get heated between these two groups. And by the time we get to the third destruction, one or two episodes away, we'll get into the life of Rata. And
Yes,
that will even
Rata,
become more
Civ,
fascinating. He gets
yeah,
into Egypt. Casey also, excuse me, goes into great depth of the Egyptian dynasties.
yes, wow,
And that
yeah, it's so cool.
pre-Atlantean Egyptian, because
Yeah.
when the Atlanteans fled to Egypt, they took a lot of the technology with them.
Mhm.
But there was a huge civilization that had been there for many, 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 many years, way before they got that technology.
Yeah, and when
But
that's
yeah,
something we're not told about.
I know it. It's just mind blowing. It's like humans, we've been here for millions of years.
Yeah,
Casey talks about that. He goes back 10 million years
he does
to
for the
humanity.
first
He-
person.
yeah, he mentioned, I think that Lemuria began 10 million years ago, was
Right.
when Lemuria began. And when Atlantis started getting into their pissing matches, I'm sorry to be so frank with my terminology, Lemuria was falling down and it had ran its
Course.
spiritual evolvement, spiritual devolvement, depending on how you want to look at it.
Hmm. It's
And
just
a lot
it.
of people say that, yeah, and a lot of people say Atlantis warred with Lemuria. And we might find some of that in the Casey readings, but I haven't found anything like that with the Casey readings.
Mm,
So I'd like to find something to cross-reference that because that's mentioned a lot and a lot from a lot of different authors, from a lot of people's past life regressions.
yes.
So is that something we're not getting out of the ARE? Is that something they're quiet about? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've read a fascinating book about Atlantis by Sarah
Yeah,
Breske
Cosma
Koskinen.
something.
Yes,
Hmm.
and
She trained with Dolores Cannon.
she did, yeah, she did QHHT through Dolores Cannon, and she's, she was written some books based on the readings that have come up. She's actually done one on Avalon, which
I
would
need
be,
to, yeah.
yeah, a great one to read. But the Atlantis one's really, really interesting because she talks about how they were kind of having some issues at the end of Lemuria and Atlantis and what was going on in there.
Did it by chance have anything to do with a red crystal or something?
Yes, it was
So I
everything to do
think
with the red crystal.
there's a Barbara Hand Clow.
Yeah.
I believe it's Barbara Hand Clow. She writes a book, and I think she talks about that as well.
Yes.
So, so if we look at an interpretation of nowadays, some country or world leader always wants somebody's mineral rights. So I just kind of am
Ooh,
trying to match, like,
that is very
like there's a
interesting.
technology they want with the natural resources, right? So yeah, I think I hope we come across more information about that because I'd love to cross-reference it with some of the Casey readings.
Yes. And this idea of the red crystals is very, very fascinating. And it
Isn't it though?
comes up in the Avalon book as well.
Does it? Oh,
Yes.
I got to read that Avalon book.
Yeah. So fascinating. Oh my
Anyways,
goodness. It's just,
thanks
there's
for
so
listening,
much.
everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. And if you like this, please like, subscribe, share. We want to get this information out to as many people as possible. We believe this is very, very important that people have an understanding of this. So please share it.
Yeah.
And if you liked it, please comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are about everything. I mean, we're not experts by any means. We're learning as we're going, and we're just sharing our different thoughts and ideas. And we'd love to know what you think as well.
Yeah, we're keeping an open mind because the truth at the end of the day is we really don't know what happened,
No,
but we need to have an idea of what potentially happened and if there's somehow we can course correct today, even if it's just with self.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thanks everyone.
Yes, thank you for joining us, everyone. And thank you so much, Jennifer. And we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.